I never imagined her last words would change everything until my brother's voice came through the phone. "Mom died last night. I inherited everything. You get nothing." Then I smiled, knowing he had no idea what was coming. I sank into the chair, phone still trembling slightly in my hand. Not from shock, but from a thrill of anticipation. Years of being overlooked, dismissed, and belittled flashed through my mind. Mom had always been fair, but my brother, arrogant, greedy, selfish, thought he deserved everything. He assumed love, wealth, and power would naturally fall into his hands. I took a deep breath and let a slow smile form on my lips. Because I wasn't angry, I wasn't desperate, I was calculating. Every detail mattered. Every tiny flaw in my brother's arrogance would be used against him. Every assumption he had about me being powerless was about to backfire. I remembered the documents Mom had carefully prepared, the subtle clauses, the hidden conditions, the exceptions he had never paid attention to. All of it now, my secret weapon. I walked around the room, thinking ahead. The house was quiet, yet the weight of what was coming felt electric. This wasn't just inheritance. This was my moment to make him realize he had underestimated me. And I knew the world would see. The lawyer, the family, everyone would witness the outcome of my perfectly calculated revenge. I picked up the phone again, listening to my brother's bragging tone in my mind, replaying his arrogance. It was all I needed. A single misstep on his part, and the plan would unfold flawlessly. I leaned back, eyes narrowing, heart steady. He thought he won. He thought Mom's passing gave him everything. But the truth, the ultimate truth, was about to be revealed. And when it happened, there would be no denying who truly inherited the power.
I didn't cry. I didn't rush to the house. I didn't call anyone back. That's where my brother made his second mistake. Instead, I sat quietly and opened an old folder I had kept for years, a folder he never knew existed. Inside were copies of documents Mom had asked me to keep just in case. At the time, I hadn't questioned her. Now I understood everything. My brother had always believed Mom trusted him more, that he was responsible, that he was the chosen one. But while he was busy showing off, Mom had been watching carefully. She saw who visited, who helped, who stayed silent but present. I drove to the lawyer's office that same afternoon, not in a rush, not in panic. Calm, controlled. The receptionist looked surprised when I gave my name. "Didn't your brother say you weren't involved?" she asked carefully. I smiled. "He assumed," I replied. The lawyer's face changed the moment he saw the documents I placed on his desk. He adjusted his glasses, read one page, then another, and then he stopped. "These clauses," he murmured. "Your brother hasn't seen these yet." I leaned forward. "He won't," I said softly, because the first move had already been made, and my brother was still celebrating a victory that never truly belonged to him.
The lawyer's hands trembled slightly as he turned the pages. These clauses, she never mentioned them, he muttered under his breath. I watched him carefully, calm and poised. Every reaction, every pause, every subtle shift in his expression was fuel for my plan. "These are conditional inheritance clauses," he continued slowly. "Specific actions, specific timelines. If ignored, the beneficiary changes automatically." I nodded, letting him realize the magnitude of what he had just read. My brother's arrogance had made him blind. He assumed the will was straightforward. He assumed he would inherit everything automatically. Meanwhile, I was already planning my next step. The clauses required certain legal notifications, verifications, and confirmations, all of which I had prepared in advance. A small smile crept across my face. He thought he had power. He thought the family and lawyer would support him. But the truth was clear. He had already lost control. I took a deep breath, letting the tension settle. Then I asked the lawyer quietly, "When should we proceed to implement these conditions?" He looked at me, still processing. "The sooner, the better. Your brother, he has no idea." Exactly as planned. The first cracks in his confidence were already forming, and I would make sure they widened until there was nothing left but regret and shock.
The following morning, my brother called, full of confidence. "Everything is mine now," he boasted, his voice dripping with arrogance. I smiled quietly, letting him think he was still in control. Meanwhile, I had already sent notifications to the lawyer and relevant authorities regarding the conditional clauses. Every step was precise, every action deliberate. By mid-afternoon, my brother received the first formal notice. He froze. His eyes widened. The arrogance that had defined him for years crumbled in an instant. What does this mean?" he stammered. The lawyer explained in careful detail. According to the clauses in the will, specific conditions were not met, and therefore the inheritance is being redistributed. I watched him struggle over the phone, helpless, panicked. The first seed of panic had been planted, and it was growing quickly. I didn't need to act further. The law, the clauses, and the careful preparation were doing all the work. This was the beauty of calculated revenge. No shouting, no confrontation, just patience, and the perfect timing of every move. By the time he realized what was happening, it was already too late. That night, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Missed calls, voicemails, messages that shifted from arrogance to confusion and then to fear. At first, my brother laughed it off. "Some paperwork issue," he said confidently. "They'll fix it." But deep down, he knew something was wrong. By the next morning, his tone had changed. "Why are they asking about Mom's medical records?" he snapped. "And why are they reviewing the dates again?" I let him talk. I let him panic. Because every question he asked only confirmed one thing. He was finally realizing he didn't understand the will at all. I visited the lawyer again, calm as ever. He looked exhausted. "Your brother is demanding answers," he said quietly. I nodded. "Tell him the truth," I replied, "that the will was never designed for greed. It was designed for responsibility." The lawyer sighed. "He's threatening legal action." I smiled. "Let him, because desperation makes people reckless, and reckless people make mistakes." Every call, every angry message, every threat only pushed him further into the trap he had walked into himself. He thought power came from inheritance, but real power came from knowing the rules, and I knew them better than he ever had.
By midweek, my brother was frantic. Calls, emails, messages, all demanding explanations. He thought he could force the lawyer to bend the rules. He thought threats would work. He thought anger could reverse the plan. But he didn't know one crucial fact. I had anticipated every move. He rushed to the lawyer's office in person, storming in with red eyes and trembling hands. "This is illegal," he shouted. "I demand control. Everything should be mine." I wasn't there yet. I let him vent. I let him make the mistake of showing the world his impatience and arrogance. The lawyer looked uneasy but firm. "You are violating the conditions of the will," he said slowly. "By forcing actions, you've triggered the final redistribution clause." My brother froze. The color drained from his face. He had crossed the line. He had ignored the warnings. And now, the last condition had activated automatically. Everything he had claimed, gone. The inheritance he assumed he would receive, no longer his. I leaned back at home, sipping tea quietly. No gloating, no celebration. The plan had worked itself out perfectly. Arrogance and greed had done all the work, and he had walked right into it.
The next morning, my brother sat in silence. The room was quiet, almost suffocating. He had checked every account, every document, every asset. Nothing. Everything had been transferred according to the clauses. Everything he assumed he would inherit, gone. He finally understood the truth. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't luck. This was calculated revenge. His face twisted with disbelief. How could you?" he whispered, almost choking on the words. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Every glance, every breath, every expression of his panic said it all. Greed had blinded him. Arrogance had destroyed him. And I had simply waited. I walked past him calmly, every step deliberate, letting him feel the weight of his loss. No words could explain what had happened. No threat could undo it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment where justice met patience, where revenge met precision. And in that silence, I smiled quietly, not for victory, but for the lesson finally learned.
My brother couldn't stay silent anymore. He tried to negotiate, to reason, to plead. "Please, there has to be a way," he begged, desperation in his voice. "You can't take everything." I looked at him calmly, sitting in the same chair I had claimed as my victory throne. No anger, no gloating, just calm certainty. "The will was clear," I said softly. "Mom trusted me because I understood responsibility. You trusted your greed." He shook his head violently, disbelief and panic battling in his eyes. "I don't understand. I did everything. I should have—" I cut him off gently. "You did what you thought was everything. But it was never enough. Greed is never enough. Arrogance is never enough." He sank into a chair, silent this time. The desperation had turned into hopelessness. The reality had hit him like a storm. And I sat there, quiet, watching, letting him feel the consequences of underestimating me. Sometimes revenge doesn't need confrontation. Sometimes it's letting people realize their own failures. And now, he was realizing it fully.
I stood at the doorway, looking back one last time. The room was quiet. My brother slumped in his chair, defeated. The lawyer quietly gathered the documents, his hands trembling, knowing there was nothing left to do. I didn't need to say anything. No words, no gloating. The consequences of his greed and arrogance had spoken for themselves. Every plan I had executed, every condition I had anticipated, every move I had made, had led to this moment. The silence of the room was deafening. It carried the weight of a lesson learned the hardest way. I stepped outside, feeling the sunlight on my face. Everything was as it should be. The inheritance was rightfully mine. The lesson for my brother was permanent. The revenge, perfect. Sometimes the quietest victories are the most satisfying. And tonight, this one was mine.